My name is Ava Martinez. I'm 22 years old, and I come from a small town where English was never the language of daily life. At home, we spoke Spanish. At school, we had English classes, but they were just that, classes, not real-life communication. We memorized grammar rules and translated sentences, but we never actually spoke English. So, although I had years of English education behind me, I could barely introduce myself without stuttering or going blank. For a long time, I told myself I wasn't good at languages, but deep down, I think I just never had the chance, or the courage, to use English in the real world. I remember the exact day everything started to shift. It was a cloudy Monday morning. I had just started my internship at a small marketing company where English was the main language of communication. Everyone around me seemed so fluent, so casual, so natural when they spoke. I, on the other hand, could barely manage a full sentence without my heart racing. My manager asked me to introduce myself in a meeting. Just a simple introduction. That's all. But when I opened my mouth, nothing came out. My palms were sweating. I looked around the room and felt like I was drowning in silence. I tried to say, "Hi, I'm Ava, and I'm excited to be here," but it came out like, "Hi, Ava, excited here." That was it. My voice cracked. My words got stuck. Everyone waited politely, but inside I was sinking. I wanted to disappear. I wanted to rewind the moment and try again. But I couldn't. And as the meeting moved on without me, I sat there, half smiling and pretending like everything was fine, while my confidence dropped to the floor. That night, I stood in front of my bedroom mirror, staring at my reflection with frustration. I said out loud, "Why can't I speak English like them?" And then I did something different. I didn't walk away. I stayed. I looked at myself and said, "Hi, I'm Ava. I'm excited to be here." Then I said it again. And again. It still sounded stiff, but at least the words came out. Then I tried more sentences. "I love music. I'm learning to speak English. I feel nervous when I talk. I want to improve." Something strange happened as I kept going. My fear slowly faded. Not completely, but enough. Enough for me to keep going the next day. And the next. I started making it a habit. Stand in front of the mirror and speak. No pressure, no grammar books, no fear of judgment. Just me, my voice, and the courage to sound awkward. But I still struggled. I still paused too much, stumbled on words, and used the wrong tenses. But I was doing something I had never done before. I was practicing speaking, not just studying. That small shift made all the difference. One day, while on a break at work, one of my colleagues casually asked, "So, Ava, what do you usually do on weekends?" It was the perfect chance. And this time I didn't freeze. I wasn't smooth or fast, but I managed to say, "I like to go walking, and sometimes I watch English movies." He smiled and nodded. He didn't correct me. He didn't laugh. He just replied, like it was normal. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. I wasn't scared of English. I was scared of being judged, but no one was judging me. The only person who was criticizing me was me. That night, I stood in front of my mirror again, and I made a quiet promise to myself. I'll speak English daily, no matter how awkward I sound. I knew I wouldn't become fluent overnight, but I also knew I couldn't afford to wait for confidence to magically appear. I had to build it, one awkward sentence at a time. And that's exactly what I did. That promise I made to myself became the foundation of something greater than I imagined. What started as 10 minutes of mumbling in front of a mirror soon evolved into a life-changing journey of expression, growth, and confidence. But at that moment, I didn't know all that. I just knew I wanted to speak better, and I was finally doing something about it. The very next day after my embarrassing moment, I sat on the edge of my bed, thinking hard. I realized something simple but powerful. Before I could speak confidently with others, I had to first feel confident speaking to myself. I had to make English a part of my daily thoughts, not just something I tried to use in school or on special occasions. So I made a decision. I would start small, with myself. I remember standing in front of the mirror that morning, holding my toothbrush and saying softly, "I am brushing my teeth." I chuckled. It sounded silly, almost childish, but I repeated it anyway. Then I moved to the kitchen and said, "I am making breakfast." While frying eggs, I added, "I am hungry today. I need food." It was basic English, nothing fancy. But for the first time, I wasn't thinking about being correct. I was just letting the words come out. Soon I began narrating everything I did, like a personal radio host. "Now I am opening the window," I'd say. "It's cold. I think I need a sweater." My voice filled my room, my hallway, and even followed me to the bathroom. At first, I was embarrassed, even though no one else could hear me. But the more I did it, the more I started enjoying it. I was surprised how much English I actually knew. I just never gave myself the chance to speak it freely without worrying. After a few days, I pushed myself further. I began making short conversations with myself. I'd look in the mirror and say, "Hi, how are you today?" Then I'd answer, "I'm good, thanks. Just a little tired." It felt like I was acting in a mini drama with me playing both roles. But oddly enough, it was fun. And more importantly, it was working. Then came the funniest part. I started talking to things. I'd walk into the kitchen and say, "Good morning, toaster. Let's make something tasty today." Or while feeding my dog Max, I'd say, "Max, do you want to eat now? You look excited." My dog would wag his tail like he understood every word, and somehow that gave me more confidence. I wasn't just practicing sentences. I was creating a space where English lived naturally, right inside my day. This daily habit began to change something deep inside me. I no longer cringed at my own voice. In fact, I was starting to like how I sounded. I began to speak with more rhythm, more energy, even more emotion. I experimented with different tones, making my voice soft, loud, dramatic, or funny. Without realizing it, I was training myself not just to say English words, but to feel them. I also stopped being so focused on grammar. I wasn't checking if my verbs were in the right tense or if my sentences were structured perfectly. I just spoke. The freedom of not having to be perfect gave me space to grow. I was speaking English, not as a subject, but as a part of myself. That realization was freeing. The best part? The fear was shrinking. Every day my hesitation faded a little more. It was like turning the volume down on the voice in my head that used to say, "What if you make a mistake?" Or, "What if someone laughs at you?" Now that voice was quiet. And my English voice was louder, stronger, and clearer. This simple routine, talking to myself, to my mirror, to my dog, even to objects, was building something solid inside me, a foundation. I didn't feel fluent yet, but I felt brave. And that bravery was enough to take the next step, because one day, while chatting with myself like usual, I paused. I stared out the window and thought, if I can talk like this at home, why not try with someone I trust? And that's when it clicked. I needed a partner. Someone who would laugh with me, not at me. Someone I could speak English with, without pressure. A few weeks after I had started speaking English to myself daily, I realized I needed to go one step further. Speaking to the mirror was helping, sure, but there was no challenge, no surprise, no real conversation. It was like rehearsing lines in a play where I already knew what came next. I needed unpredictability. I needed real interaction. So, one evening, I finally gathered up the courage and shared my goal with my closest friend, Emma. Emma had always been the cheerful type, open-minded, supportive, and a bit adventurous. I was nervous she might laugh or find the idea silly, but as soon as I told her, her face lit up. "Let's speak English for 10 minutes every day," she said with this excited grin. That one sentence changed everything. Our first English-only session was hilarious. We sat in the park with coffee in our hands, trying to talk about our day in English, but every sentence was a battlefield. We'd both forget words like backpack or snacks, and ended up replacing them with wild gestures or weird sound effects. Sometimes we just burst into laughter because what we were saying didn't make any sense. But we didn't care. We were in it together, and that made the awkwardness a little easier to bear. What started as a challenge quickly became our new daily ritual. Every day after school, no matter how tired we were, we set aside 10 minutes just to speak English. At first, it was full of pauses. We'd speak slowly, overthink every word, and constantly correct each other. But with every passing day, something started to shift. The pauses got shorter. The flow got smoother. Our vocabulary, without even studying, began to grow naturally. I remember one day we talked about our favorite movies, and the conversation lasted more than 30 minutes. And it didn't even feel like we were trying anymore. We joked about scenes, quoted dialogues, and even argued a little over which actor was better, all in English. For a second, I forgot that it wasn't our native language. That's when it hit me. We were learning without feeling like we were learning. Emma even made a rule, no switching to our native language during our English time, no matter how frustrated we got. It was tough, but it worked. Sometimes we'd use weird ways to explain things, like describing an elevator as the box that goes up and down in buildings, but that made it more memorable. We stopped chasing perfection and just focused on communication. That shift in mindset was everything. Over the next few weeks, these conversations became more than just practice. They became our comfort zone. We weren't just improving our English. We were building something else. Confidence. I found myself becoming less afraid of making mistakes, less worried about how I sounded. The fear that used to paralyze me started melting away because I knew someone was listening, not to judge, but to help. Emma also began noticing our progress. She once told me, "Have you realized that we can now talk about anything in English?" I laughed, but it was true. From school gossip to weekend plans to even deep talks about life, we were doing it all in a language that once felt foreign. And the best part? We were doing it without textbooks or grammar drills, just by showing up every day and speaking. Eventually, we started using English in front of others too, ordering food, asking for directions, even chatting with tourists we met at the mall. What used to be intimidating had now become second nature, and every time we had a successful conversation with a stranger, it gave us a little boost. proof that our daily talks were actually working. One day, after a long conversation about our future dreams, I looked at Emma and said, "Can you believe this all started with 10 awkward minutes a day?" She nodded with a proud smile. We both knew we weren't done yet, but we had come so far already. That's when I started thinking, if I could speak English comfortably with a friend, could I do it with strangers too? The day I decided to put my English into real-life use was the turning point. I had spent weeks speaking to myself, practicing with my best friend and getting comfortable hearing my voice in English. But deep inside, I knew that true fluency wouldn't come unless I stepped outside of that safe bubble. One sunny afternoon, I walked into a local coffee shop, hands slightly trembling, heart pounding. I stood in line, rehearsing the sentence, in my mind over and over again. "Can I have a cappuccino, please?" When it was finally my turn, I looked at the barista, swallowed my fear, and spoke the words. "Can I have a cappuccino, please?" To my surprise, the barista didn't look confused. He didn't laugh. In fact, he smiled and replied, "Of course." That small interaction felt like a massive victory. It may have only lasted a few seconds, but for me, it felt like I had crossed a mountain. I left the shop with my coffee in hand, feeling like I had just unlocked a new level of confidence. After that day, something shifted inside me. I began to see every interaction in my city as a chance to practice English. At the grocery store, I asked questions about products in English. At the park, I struck up small conversations with tourists looking for directions. At the bus stop, I asked strangers simple things like, "Does this bus go to the mall?" These weren't deep conversations, and sometimes I made mistakes. But no one cared. In fact, most people were kind, patient, and even excited to talk. Each little exchange added a brick to the foundation of my fluency. I didn't worry about grammar rules or whether I used the perfect tense. I focused on communicating. I realized that fluency wasn't about speaking without mistakes. It was about being able to express yourself naturally, even if it wasn't perfect. These real-life conversations taught me something no textbook ever had: how English feels. The rhythm, the pauses, the smiles, the expressions. It all made more sense when I was actually using the language, not just studying it. I began to understand common phrases and expressions just by hearing them in context. I could tell when someone was joking or being serious just from their tone. Slowly, I stopped translating from my native language in my head. I started thinking in English without even noticing. My fear was no longer my boss. I was in control now, and then came the moment that told me I was truly growing. I was at a bookstore, and a foreign student asked me if I knew where to find English novels. Without hesitation, I said, "Yeah, they're right over here. I love reading English novels too." As we walked to the section, we kept talking. I asked where he was from, how long he had been here, and what kind of books he liked. 10 minutes passed, then 15. It was only when we said goodbye that I realized I had just had an entire conversation smoothly, without planning or pausing. That interaction gave me the biggest realization of all. The more I practiced speaking in daily life, the more natural it became. No pressure, no exams, no fear. Just real people, real moments, and real English. That's when it hit me. I didn't need to be perfect to be fluent. I just needed to be present and brave. And with every cappuccino order, every bus stop chat, every hello and how are you, I was becoming more fluent, not just in the language, but in the confidence to live it. This daily, real-world practice wasn't just building my English. It was building me. It was a regular Wednesday evening. I had just finished dinner when I received a message from a friend I had met online through an international learning app. Her name was Sophia, and she lived in Portugal. We had been texting in English for a few weeks, helping each other with small conversations and laughing at our mistakes. That evening, she asked, "Do you want to have a voice call today?" A few months ago, the idea of a live English call would have terrified me. I would have made excuses like, "My mic is broken," or "maybe tomorrow." But this time, without even hesitating, I typed, "Sure, let's do it." The moment the call started, something unusual happened. I didn't overthink my words. I wasn't translating from my native language in my head. I wasn't silently judging myself for grammar mistakes. I just spoke. I listened. I reacted. I laughed. We talked about everything. What we ate for dinner, our favorite songs, why sunsets feel so emotional, and how we both wanted to travel to Asia someday. I noticed something during the call. My voice flowed like water. The words weren't perfect, but they were mine. There was no awkward pause, no searching for the right word, no nervous breath between every sentence. It was just like speaking to a childhood friend in my native tongue. Except this time, the entire conversation was in English. After an hour, Sophia said, "Haley, you sound so comfortable speaking now. You've improved so much." And that's when it hit me. I had just spoken in English for a full hour, without freezing, without doubting myself, without even realizing that I was using another language. It felt so natural, so effortless. I had done something I used to dream of doing, and I hadn't even realized it while it was happening. When the call ended, I sat back in my chair. The room was quiet, but my mind was buzzing. I looked around and smiled. Really smiled. Then I whispered to myself, I don't just speak English now. I feel it. That moment was everything. It wasn't just a conversation. It was a celebration of how far I had come, of all the little efforts I had made that no one saw, of every time I spoke to myself while washing dishes, of the awkward voice recordings I sent to my friends for feedback, of the days I repeated the same phrase 10 times just to make it sound right. All of it, every second of practice, had led me to this moment. And I realized something else, too. The real change didn't come from grammar books or strict rules. It came from showing up every single day, speaking a little bit more than I did the day before. It came from accepting that mistakes are part of the journey. It came from choosing to speak even when I was scared. That's the secret. It's not about having a perfect accent or memorizing fancy words. It's about building a habit, a speaking habit. That becomes so natural, you forget it used to be difficult. From that day forward, I stopped calling myself a learner. I started calling myself a speaker, because I didn't just speak for practice anymore. I spoke for real, for fun, for connection. That one evening call changed my identity. It proved to me that I didn't need permission to be fluent. I just needed to keep speaking, daily, openly, and without fear. And if I could do it, so can you. Hey friends, did this story remind you of your own English journey? Are you scared to speak out loud just like I was? Don't wait for the perfect time. Start speaking today, even if it's just to your mirror. If you found this story helpful and inspiring, please like the video, share it with your friends. Comment your favorite part of the story. And don't forget to subscribe to English Tone for more simple and powerful stories that help you speak English naturally. Let's speak English, together daily and confidently.